My wife told me to sleep in the garage because real men make more money. I said nothing. 6 weeks later, she came home to an empty house. The night everything changed didn't begin with shouting. It began with silence. Rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows while I stood over the sink washing the dinner dishes. My wife, Vanessa, sat in the living room scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. I had just finished another 12-hour shift at the local machine shop. My hands were rough, my back ached, and my boots were covered in grease. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills, or at least most of them. For 23 years, I had done everything I could for my family. I'd missed birthdays because of overtime, worked weekends, skipped vacations, sold my motorcycle when our son needed braces. Never complained, not once. Vanessa walked into the kitchen carrying a glass of wine. She glanced around. "That's all we're having for dinner now?" she asked. I nodded. The grocery prices went up again. She rolled her eyes. "Maybe if you earned what a real man should, we wouldn't have to count every dollar." The word stung, but I stayed quiet. I had learned long ago that arguing only made things worse. She laughed under her breath. "Honestly, Mark, look at you." I looked down at my stained work shirt. She continued. "Tom just bought his wife a brand new Mercedes." Tom, our neighbor, a financial consultant who loved showing off. Every conversation with Vanessa somehow ended with Tom. Tom takes his wife to Europe. Tom bought a lake house. Tom wears tailored suits. I finally spoke. "I'm not Tom." "No," she replied coldly. "You're not." The room fell silent. Then came the sentence I would never forget. "If you were a real man, you'd make more money." I stared at her. She didn't smile. She meant every word. Before I could answer, she pointed toward the door leading into the garage. "Sleep out there tonight." I blinked. "What? I don't want someone who can't provide sleeping beside me." I searched her face for any sign she was joking. There wasn't one. She folded her arms. "The garage has a couch." I stood there for several seconds. 23 years of marriage. Reduced to that, without saying another word, I picked up my pillow. As I walked past her, she added one final sentence. "Maybe it'll motivate you." The garage smelled of old paint, engine oil, and cardboard boxes. I sat on the worn-out couch staring into the darkness. The rain grew heavier. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to ask a question. How did we get here? Vanessa hadn't always been like this. When we met in college, she loved that I was dependable. She used to tell everyone I was the kindest man she'd ever known. Money never mattered, or at least I thought it didn't. Somewhere over the years, kindness had become weakness. Loyalty had become ordinary. Hard work had become invisible. I barely slept. At 5 in the morning, I quietly got dressed and left for work before she woke up. No goodbye, no kiss, nothing. At the machine shop, my friend Eddie noticed immediately. "You look terrible." I forced a smile. "Didn't sleep much." He leaned closer. "Everything okay?" For a moment, I almost lied. Instead, I told him. Everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he shook his head. "Mark, that's not marriage." I shrugged. "Maybe she's right." He slammed his wrench onto the workbench. "No." The entire shop turned to look. "You have worked harder than anyone here for 20 years. His voice softened. "Never let someone measure your value by your paycheck." Those words stayed with me all day. That Friday, something unexpected happened. Our company owner, Mr. Holloway, asked me to stay after work. I assumed I had made a mistake. Instead, he smiled. "You've been here 18 years. "Yes, sir. I've watched you solve problems nobody else could." I nodded. "I've been thinking about retirement." I looked confused. "I want someone trustworthy to supervise the new expansion." I froze. "The promotion comes with a significant raise." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. He continued. "You've earned it." I thanked him repeatedly. Driving home, I should have felt excited. Instead, I felt strangely empty. Because I already knew something. The raise wouldn't fix what had happened in my garage. That evening, I told Vanessa. She barely looked away from her phone. "Oh, I got promoted." "How much?" I told her. Her eyes finally lit up. "That's better." No congratulations. No hug. No pride. Only relief that the number was larger. That's when I realized something. She hadn't been missing money. She had been missing status. And no amount of income would ever be enough. Over the next 6 weeks, I changed. Quietly, I stopped begging for conversations. Stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. Started going to the gym after work. Read books again. Reconnected with old friends, opened a separate savings account, met with a financial advisor, checked every legal document connected to our home. For the first time in decades, I began planning a future that didn't depend on someone else's approval. Vanessa hardly noticed. She assumed my silence meant surrender. She couldn't have been more wrong. The 6th week began like every other. Vanessa rushed through breakfast without looking at me. "I'm having dinner with Claire tonight," she said while checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. I nodded. "Fine." She frowned. "That's it. What else would you like me to say?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Ask where we're going." "You've already decided." She grabbed her purse. "I liked you better when you actually cared." The irony almost made me laugh. For years I had cared so much that I'd forgotten to care for myself. Now that I finally had, she called it indifference. After she left, I sat alone with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet, too quiet. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful instead of lonely. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was our attorney, Mr. Carter. "Yes, the paperwork is ready whenever you are. I'll be there after work." I hung up and stared through the windshield. 6 weeks earlier I never imagined I would be sitting in a lawyer's office. But some wounds don't heal. They simply reveal the truth. Respect cannot survive where humiliation becomes routine. The attorney reviewed every document carefully. "You've requested an equal division of assets." "Yes." "No revenge." I smiled faintly. "No." He nodded. "That's unusual. I don't want revenge." "What do you want?" I answered without hesitation. "Peace." Over the next few days, I quietly packed only what belonged to me. Old photographs, my father's watch, the toolbox Grandpa had given me when I turned 18. A few books, some clothes, nothing more. Every object carried a memory. Some made me smile, others reminded me of promises that no longer existed. Saturday morning, Eddie helped load everything into a rented truck. He looked around the garage. "So this is where she made you sleep?" I nodded. He shook his head slowly. "One day she'll realize what she threw away. I hope she finds happiness." He looked surprised. "After everything, I don't hate her." "Then why leave?" "Because forgiving someone doesn't mean staying where you're not respected." Eddie smiled. "That's the smartest thing you've ever said." My new apartment wasn't fancy. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a balcony overlooking a quiet park. No expensive furniture, no luxury. But when I unlocked the door, something unexpected happened. I smiled. It felt like freedom. That night I made myself grilled cheese sandwiches and watched an old baseball game. No criticism, no comparisons, no insults, just peace. I hadn't realized how heavy constant judgment had become until it disappeared. Sunday afternoon, I returned to the house one last time. Vanessa had gone shopping. The rooms echoed. I walked through each one slowly. Our wedding picture still hung above the fireplace. We looked so young, so hopeful. I took it down carefully. Not to keep it, to place it in a box labeled, Memories. Some chapters deserve respect even after they end. On the kitchen counter I left a single envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Not angry, not cruel, simply honest. "Vanessa, I spent years trying to become enough for someone who had already decided I wasn't. You once told me real men make more money. I finally realized real men also know when to walk away. I hope you find what you're looking for. I have decided to find peace. Goodbye, Mark." I placed my wedding ring beside the letter. Then I locked the front door. For the last time, that evening, just after 6 o'clock, Vanessa pulled into the driveway. She stepped out carrying shopping bags. She frowned. The driveway looked strangely empty. No pickup truck, no toolbox, no lawn mower. She unlocked the front door. Mark. Silence. She walked into the living room. Half the shelves were empty. The closet door stood open. The garage, completely cleared out except for the old couch where she had once told her husband to sleep. Then she saw the envelope on the kitchen counter. Her hands began to shake. She opened it. By the time she reached the last line, the house no longer felt like home. Vanessa read the letter twice. Then a third time. No. She grabbed her phone and called me. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. A text followed. "Mark, stop playing games. Where are you?" I didn't reply. For years, I had answered every call within minutes. Now, for the first time, I chose my own peace. The next morning, she drove to the machine shop. Eddie was tightening bolts on a machine when she rushed inside. "Where's Mark?" Eddie looked up calmly. "He doesn't work here anymore." Her face turned pale. "What?" He accepted another position. Where? I'm not sharing that. She stepped closer. I'm his wife. Eddie met her eyes. And he deserves respect. Those words hit harder than she expected. She left without another word. Meanwhile, I had started my new job as operations manager at a growing manufacturing company. It wasn't just the higher salary. It was the environment. People thanked each other. Ideas were heard. Hard work was appreciated. On my first day, the company owner shook my hand. We're lucky to have you. It had been years since anyone had said that. 3 days later, I was sitting on the balcony of my apartment when my phone buzzed. A message from our son, Daniel. Dad, Mom's been crying. Can we talk? I replied, of course. We met the next evening at a quiet diner. Daniel looked uncomfortable. I didn't know things were this bad. I know. Why didn't you tell me? I smiled sadly. Parents spend their lives protecting their children, even after they're grown. He looked down at his coffee. I'm sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. After a long silence, he asked the question he'd been carrying. Do you still love Mom? I thought carefully before answering. I'll always care about the woman I married. He nodded. But I can't keep living with the person she became. Daniel understood. Back at the house, Vanessa walked from room to room. Every empty space reminded her of something she'd taken for granted. The garage door was still open. She looked at the old couch. For the first time, she imagined how lonely Mark must have felt that night. One sentence echoed in her mind. Sleep out there. She sat on the couch and cried. Not because the house was empty. Because she finally understood why. A week later, she asked to meet. I agreed. We sat across from each other in a small park. She looked different. No designer clothes. No perfect makeup. Just tired eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believed she meant it. But some apologies arrive after the damage is done. I know, I said gently. I was cruel. You were. I thought money was everything. I stayed silent. She wiped away tears. I forgot who stood beside me when we had nothing. I nodded. We built a life together. And I destroyed it. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, I stood. I truly hope you find happiness, Vanessa. Aren't you coming home? I looked at her with kindness, not anger. I already have. I walked away without looking back. Not because I hated her. Because I had finally learned to value myself. Sometimes the strongest man in the room isn't the one who earns the most. It's the one who quietly walks away from a place where he is no longer respected. 2 months passed. Life settled into a rhythm I hadn't experienced in years. I woke before sunrise, made coffee, walked through the park, and went to work without the knot of anxiety that had once lived in my stomach. For the first time in a long time, home felt like a place of peace. One Friday afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. Mark, there's someone here asking for you. I looked up. Who is it? She says her name is Vanessa. I took a slow breath. Send her in. She stepped inside, looking nervous. She wasn't dressed to impress anyone. She simply looked tired. I won't keep you long, she said. I motioned toward the chair. Have a seat. She sat down quietly. I sold the Mercedes. I nodded. I also canceled the country club membership. Again, I simply listened. She looked around my office. You've done well. I've worked hard. She smiled sadly. I know. After a long silence, she whispered. I spent years thinking success was measured by money. And now, I've learned it's measured by who still wants to sit across the table from you. The room fell silent. I don't expect you to come back, she said. I know. I just needed you to hear me say I'm sorry, without asking for anything. For the first time since we separated, I saw genuine humility in her eyes. It wasn't too late for her to become a better person. But it was too late for us to become the couple we once were. I forgive you, I said. Tears rolled down her face. Thank you, but forgiveness isn't the same as going back. She nodded. I understand. She stood, gave me one last grateful smile, and quietly walked out of my office. That was the last time I saw her. Months later, Daniel invited me to dinner. Halfway through the meal, he smiled. You seem lighter. I laughed. I am. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings. One evening, I returned to my apartment and stood on the balcony as the sun disappeared behind the trees. I thought about the garage. About the insults. About the long nights wondering whether I was enough. Then I smiled. Because I finally knew the answer. My worth had never depended on my paycheck. It had never depended on someone else's approval. It had always been there. I just needed the courage to see it. Sometimes life doesn't reward the loudest person. Sometimes it rewards the one who quietly keeps their dignity. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't making someone regret losing you. It's building a life so peaceful that you no longer need them to.